The Energy Department has attributed the current price hikes to the high oil prices and the weaker rand to the dollar. Fuel prices are set to go up next month. Diesel users will be the most affected as the price will increase by R1.43 a litre. Both grades of petrol will increase by 51 cents a litre. Illuminating paraffin will go up by 77 cents a litre. The department's Robert Maake says that the high demand and continued low supply of diesel have led to a high increase in diesel prices compared to petrol. Let's get more on this then. We are now joined by Leighton Bird, who's a spokesperson for the Automobile Association. A very good afternoon to you. Thanks so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you so much, Flo. Always good to speak to you.
It's always good to speak to you too. When petrol prices went up, I think it was around April, you and I had a conversation, and I remember you saying that government needs to look into further relief measures for the consumer heading to towards the end of the year. Instead, we find ourselves faced with yet another hike. And yes, I think there was some reprieve around, if I'm not wrong, in September. Is there an absolute refusal on the part of government, in seeking relief measures, or is it a case of government having its hands tied? And I'm sure they'd like for us to believe that.
Look, I think it's a combination of both. I think that to a certain extent there are certain restrictions that are placed on the government, and they can't necessarily deal with them in a way that is independent from what's happening around the world. We have to buy oil at specific prices, and we have to buy the raw product at specific prices, and we have to import finished product at specific prices. And unfortunately, those prices are determined not necessarily by the South African government, but on an international market, and they will get passed over to consumers locally. In the case of, for instance, the rand-US dollar exchange rate, certainly, you'd want to see a macroeconomic framework that makes it easy to do business in South Africa, that is investor-friendly, that deals with the value of the rand against the dollar on that level. But to a large extent, there is very little that the South African government can do, but that's, again, part of the reason why the AA has been calling for a very long time for a review of fuel prices. We understand that there are certain discussions that are happening at the DMRE behind closed doors to deal with specifics of the fuel price structure. What those discussions are, we unfortunately don't know, and we're not part of those discussions, but we understand that some attention is being given to them. I guess it's just a question, Flo, of wait and see and wait for government to tell us what plans they have going forward. But as of this stage, we unfortunately know very little.
I want to talk about the margins of increase. All right, so we can say that government can't do anything when it comes to increasing the fuel levy, but let's talk about those margins then. Are they justified? I mean, if you look at how much the price of petrol has increased, is it justifiable, or is it a case of people needing to have what is this? Is it petrol stations also wanting to have their own profit on the side? I mean, what are we talking about? Is it justified? I'm talking about in terms of the margins of these increases.
Look, I think that's a very complex question to answer. I think that within the framework that we have at the moment, they certainly are justified. But again, is that framework the correct framework for South African fuel pricing? And is there something better we can be doing? And that's really the question that we're asking. A lot of people are saying, let's just cut the levies out of the picture. And our view on that is, well, first of all, we need to be looking at the road accident fund levy. That for us is a very key number within the fuel price makeup that we can target, that we can look at. We know the RAF as an institution in our minds is poorly run. There's some savings in our view that can be made there. In terms of the general fuel levy, you take that €3.94 off a litre of fuel. Government is going to find it in another way. And is that really the solution? So for us, again, Flo, it's all a question of let's unpack each and every element of the fuel price and see where there are places that we can mitigate against rising costs.
And I like the fact that in some of your articles you've raised the issue of how much all of this impacts the way that South Africans live, the financial health of South Africans, but also you talk about these increases having an impact on the economy at large. And I'd really like to have a conversation on that. I mean, I'm sure any ordinary South African can feel the pinch, but I think it's important just to have these sort of conversations, just how much this is affecting all of us.
No, it certainly is impacting on everybody, and I think the big thing that we know about the fuel price is that it doesn't only impact on motorists or people who have vehicles, whether they are, motorbikes or vehicles themselves.
Yeah.
They impact on every single South African because fuel, and specifically diesel, is such a major input cost in the manufacturing sector, in the agricultural sector, in the mining sector, in the road freight sector. These all impact on the goods that we eventually buy on the shelves at our local shops. So when those input costs go up, they are going to be passed on to consumers at some stage. They may not happen immediately. In some instances they do, but they will filter in, and you will have an impact on inflation, and you will have an impact on the economy, and at the end of the day you will have an impact on somebody who maybe walks to work and says, but I don't drive a car. Well, it's going to have an impact on the stuff you buy. So at the end of the day, rising fuel costs are going to have a huge impact on the cost of living across the board, Flo, and that's really the point that we make as well.
And my concern, Mr. Bird, is how sustainable this all is. I don't know if I made the example to you the last time that the two of us spoke, that I made a like and like comparison as to what I was paying for a full tank in a certain month compared from this year to last year. And I mean, if that's going to happen again, if I compare next year, I mean, that's just it's simply not sustainable for the South African public. Where do you see all of this sort of going forward? Are we just going to accept the fact that every couple of months there is this increase?
Well, look, it's a tough thing to deal with if you're an individual, and what that means is that your budget is becoming less expendable. So you're going to be spending more on fuel just to get to and from work, perhaps, and for those emergencies that you need a vehicle for. But the things that you buy, you may not be able to get as many of those as you would in the months past. Where the fuel price is going to go, I get asked this question all the time, Flo. Are we going to have another increase in December, January, February? Well, the answer to that is we simply don't know. We have to see what happens on a daily basis. Is the rand going to strengthen at all against the US dollar? Are those international product prices going to come down? Is raw oil, crude Brent oil, is that going to decrease in price, or is that going to become more expensive? So there are very many factors that impact on all of those things, and they can change overnight. So it makes it very difficult to forecast what's going to happen with the fuel price. I mean, the best advice we can give people is be aware of the fuel price, understand how that impacts on your budget, and if unfortunately there are things that you must cut from that budget to make your ends meet, then sadly that's the advice that you will be given.
All right, Leighton, we appreciate your expertise here on the show. Thank you very mumuch for giving us your time, sir.
Thank you so much, Flo. Always a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much. That's a Leighton Bird, spokesperson at the Automobile Association, reacting, of course, to those price increases, as the Energy Department has attributed the current price hikes to higher oil prices and the weaker rand to the dollar.